Okay, so this is a little excerpt from a research talk that we gave when we wrote the paper about this. As I briefly summarized a couple of days ago, this stands for pedagogic content knowledge. And so it's an intersection really, not a union. So it's the intersection of knowledge about how to teach generically and knowledge of your content, the content you're teaching. So when you blend those, then you're learning how to teach what you're teaching. And that's what PCK is. And it's a real thing in education literature. And there is a classic paper on it by this person. Here. PCK is specific to the topic or the content you're teaching. So there's PCK for literature, or geography, or math, or computer science, or, computer science algorithms courses, or, teaching gender mag or whatever. So it's very specific. And not only is it specific to the topic, but also the audience, the particular population of students that you're trying to reach in this class, whatever your tomorrow's class is. And therefore, if you're going to measure it, then you have to, of course, measure it in those ways. When we were working on our research study, what we wanted to know is what PCK do teachers need, faculty need to teach inclusive design. And that is, of course, very pertinent to this effort we're working on now. When we did it, we collected information from a whole bunch of computer science faculty members. Well, not a whole bunch, 8, I believe, 9, I'll tell you in a minute. And also information science faculty. And so these were the professors and these were the students. And what they were doing is similar to what you're doing, taking bits and pieces of Gender Mag and integrating them into the various courses they were teaching. But they weren't doing it nearly as systematically as you're doing it. And also there was no notion of a spine. People just taught whatever it is they taught and said, yeah, I have an idea. And so, I'll try it out. So that's what they did. So that's what they did. We've mentioned the site. These PCKs are there. I think they live under item 2. So you can always look these up later. Okay, yeah, it was 9 faculty members. We call them teacher researchers in our paper because not only were they teaching, but they were also, much like you, trying to figure out, what's the right way to do this. So everything they were doing was sort of a blend of teaching and researching. They were at 8 U.S. universities, and so all told, it involved 467 students. And so, yeah, a bunch of teachers who have these IDs. As you can see, the courses that they covered were not nearly as many as what you all are covering. Many of them taught various HCI courses. A couple of them taught seminars. Here's some more HCI. And then several of them were doing software engineering courses. So almost all of these were junior and above. I think the only exception was the ethics of technology. I think that one is just for whenever people take it. Yes, okay, and here are the various levels of where students were and how many students were in each of these various classes. Okay, let's see here. So we did an analysis of the kinds of things that people ran into, students. And so here's one example. There's a phrase called theory of mind, which describes someone's ability to believe that they know that to kind of step in the shoes of someone else. It's called theory of mind because it means I have a theory of what you're thinking. Anyway, and so this is something that you really need with GenderMag because you have to be able to think of things through Abby's perspective or Pat's perspective or Tim's perspective. And so some students had trouble doing that. And another one is some students started taking what the faculty members were saying and turning them into a propensity to over stereotype, saying things like women do this and men do that. Now, since the time that they did this work, which was 2017 mostly, we've greatly emphasized all three personas, and I think that's helped to make this problem not be as big a deal as it was then. But this is another moment for me to emphasize to you that whenever you can either use one persona in your work or you can use three personas in your work, but never just use two. Let's see here. So then in our paper, we recorded how many instances there. So then in our paper, we recorded how many instances there were. As you can see, for most of these, the number of instances was a pretty small proportion of the students that it happened to, but it did arise in a reasonable fraction of the courses. So what that tells you is any of these things could come up in a course that you're teaching, and that's why I'm giving you the PCK. Right, okay. And of course, not only do these matter to you because nobody likes pushback, but they're also risks to learning. So your students, if they feel like this is not, not a good thing in one way or another, or I don't get it, or I can't do it, then that's getting in the way of them learning. As a result of the various ways that these faculty members found to overcome one or another of these things, we reported on these 11 PCKs, and these are just a bunch of check marks that shows all the evidence that they came from. And 4 of them that I'll just talk about this morning or this afternoon are these 4: framing, credibility, theory, mind, and handling resistance. Again, the complete list is on the GenderMag Teach site, and the paper is also available for you there at the GenderMag Teach site if you want to read the whole thing. By the way, this paper was published at ICER, one of the main computer science education conferences. So starting with PCK 1 and 2, this is framing, basically people wondering, is this important? Is this useful? One set of students said, well, is this even different from anything I've already learned? What makes it different from just any other cognitive walkthrough? And this was a student who said this. What one of the faculty members said, this is a teacher, T is for teacher, is they started off by giving the paper on stereotyping as reading before the lecture. And so they did it as sort of a flipped classroom to have the students have thought about things before they ever started discussing them. So that was one of the things that they did to overcome it. One of the other things that can be used to overcome it, this may be particularly useful in the 3rd year HCI or software engineering course where you teach the full method, is to start with the foundations, and the full GenderMag lecture that is available on the GenderMag Teach site does it that way. And you may remember that in my talk, I was foundation heavy too with all of that data. So this really helps people believe what they're seeing instead of thinking we just made it up. And especially in disciplines like computer science, people tend to like data. And so things like bar charts and stuff like that tend to be quite convincing. And another thing, and I mentioned this yesterday too, there were certain assignments where I think somebody gave a little reference, maybe it was Laura, just gave a little citation. And so you don't even have to talk about the foundations. Just citing something along the way shows that there are foundations. And that also is very convincing. And another thing that you can do if someone asks about it is that on the GenderMag site, the basic gendermag.org, on personas, the foundations are given. And in fact, let me just show you that because might be useful. And slowly we do this. Okay, so under the personas, you can see persona foundations. And so what we've done here is we've given a slightly spread out repeat of the persona. So here's Abby, for example, and it's the same as the Abby persona you've seen before, except it's kind of spread out a little more, and there's splops of gray, and there are a bunch of sources and footnotes. And so what we've done is every paragraph on here, we've given all the sources that caused us to write that paragraph, and you can just click on them and get directly to whatever we're citing. And sometimes if we have something additional to say, then we have one of these little lettered footnotes, which, will say, this is why this is here, and so on. All this is just one long web page, so you can just scroll through it. And we have all three of the personas here. And the splots of gray just indicate the parts that are not customizable. And as you've seen before, when I did the talk, I had a horizontal line here, and as you can, here below the background. And as you can see, most of the background is customizable and none of the problem solving styles are. Okay. Okay, we did that. PCK 6. Coaching, that's the word we wanted yesterday, Laura, instead of modeling. Okay, so sometimes, and you, let's see, maybe you experienced this when you were off doing your GenderMag walkthroughs yourselves on the first day of the workshop, but some people have a lot of trouble doing this. They just have so much trouble standing in someone else's shoes. And so, or they just forget to do it. And so one of the things that one of the faculty members does is and I've picked this up as well, is I just say, your job is to channel Abby, become Abby. Don't think about anyone except Abby. Your brain becomes Abby's brain. And so that's why we spend time studying that persona before we start on a GenderMag session. And why, as an example of coaching or modeling, why I sat there and read it in front of you to make you read it too, instead of doing something else while you read it, because I don't really need to read it again. I mean, I've read it a few times already, but I'm modeling or coaching what I want you to do, so I'm sitting there reading it. Well, I'm holding up the wrong thing, actually. Blueprints. Anyway, think of that as a persona. Let's see here. Okay, another thing that I do, let's see if that's on here. No, it's not. Here's something else I do. When I hear people doing a GenderMag session and I hear them say, okay, if I saw this, I would do this. Then if I'm coaching them, if I'm in that session, I say, well, I don't care what you would do. I only care what Abby would do, or if they're using Tim or Pat, then I only care what Tim is doing or Pat is doing. And so I don't let them use the word I. Similar words that I don't let them use are you, or the user, or people. I just keep saying, I don't care about people. I only care about Abby. And I have heard people change their answers midstream when I do that. It just blew me away the first time I heard it. We were in a session for this is for a national lab. And so this group of people that wanted to learn Gender Mag, they were walking through one of their applications, and the boss, chimed in, and so so we're doing this, what will Abby do? And, will Abby do this? And the boss is saying, well, something like, well, when you want to do such and such, and I interrupted him. No one else would. Of course, he was the boss. I said, I don't care what you would do. I only care what Abby would do. And he said, okay, fine. If Abby wanted to, well, wait. And he just totally changed horses when his brain made him envision Abby instead of some mythical you or people or users. So, yeah, okay. Okay, let's see here, resistant learners. So one person was really worried about stereotyping, and we've seen it. Some people are not taking Abby seriously, or Pat or Tim. They'll make them into caricatures of whatever they really are. And so among the things that really work, first of all, I think the facet survey that Laura, or sorry, not the survey, the activity that Laura first explained to you and then you all did yourselves is just a huge thing to help ward that off. Once you've applied the facets to yourself, you're going to take them seriously. So that right there is a huge mitigator. But another mitigator is I've heard people say, well, this isn't worth anything because you can never have 100% perfect interface. So the key here is to agree. Whenever anybody is worried about anything like stereotyping or it's not perfect or whatever, the key is always agree first, and then say, why that is still okay. So here I said, you're right, but we're not aiming for 100%. We're just aiming for better. Just like when you debug, you're not aiming for 100% perfect software, but you're trying to get the bugs that you know about out. So that really helps. The primary benefits of inclusion. Another thing that really helps is the secondary benefits of inclusion, basically the economics. And so here you can apply to their professionalism as CS future professionals. It's like if you work for a company and you say, let's throw away, some say 50% of the market, you're not going to keep your job very long. So that's also a very good motivator for this. Yeah, that's that PCK. Okay, and then I was just going to show you a little bit about the data. Let's see. Oh, this is an awesome one. At the end of one class, one professor asked students these questions. You may recognize some of them. The Gender Mag method found meaningful issues. We changed our design. I can do a Gender Mag evaluation in the future when I create software. I want to bring some of this in. And so these were on a 5-point Likert scale. 132 students answered, and as you can see, the scores were quite high. So that is everything I really wanted to say, I think, about the PCK. Let's see here, except to just point you to where you can look at it. So again, we'll go to the same Gender Mag Teach that we've been hanging out on so much. It's item 2A on the nav bar under how to teach. You go there. It summarizes them all with a quick quote. You can also download the full paper, or you can download the slides of the student who presented that. Alana Olson was her name. Yeah, so that is that. Hopefully these will be useful if you run into something that you're saying, how do we handle